Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. I'm your host, Paul Valley, and Ryan, how you've grown in the last week. No, that's not Ryan Blake, as you got Dillon Atkinson. Dillon is kind enough to join us today while Ryan is out of town on a something with his family, with his fiance's family came up, something like that. There's some kind of birthday or something like that he thought was next weekend. It's this weekend. Dillon Atkinson kind enough to join in today. So Dillon, thank you for joining us. How you been, man?
Not too bad. I appreciate you having me on, man.
Yeah, no, we're excited. I'm happy to talk some Orioles baseball with you. Orioles back into Grapefruit League action today as the quest for another division title and hopefully their first World Series in 41 years begins today. Want to remind you that spring training games are officially underway today. And remember that you can bet every single game, including Baltimore-Boston today with Superbook. The Orioles are favored on the money line in today's Grapefruit League opener at minus 155 with the over-under set at 10 runs, both paying out at minus 110. And the Red Sox are the odds-on favorite to cover the 1.5 run spread at minus 150. When you sign up at Superbook, use the code PRESSBOX23 and you'll receive a same-day first bet match up to $250 win or lose. So, Dillon, if you're not signed up with Superbook, go in there, put in PRESSBOX23, and you can get $250. They'll match you up to $250 win or lose. You can't beat it, man.
All right, I got to sign up today then.
You get after it. And you got a couple hours after the show ends before the Orioles game, so you can start placing your bets. Orioles 18-1 today. Just like was it 18-1 or 14-1? The Dodgers in their first game against the Padres on Thursday.
I want to say it was 14-1 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think it was 14-1. Dodgers got off and running. My God, they're just loaded. But 8 runs in the first inning, 6 more runs in the 6th inning as they just blew the Padres out of the water. They aren't going to win every game like that, but with that lineup, man, my God.
I don't know. They might be the first team to go 162-0. Let's be honest here.
Well, then it just depends on whose season ends first, because if the Orioles' last game ends before the Dodgers, they'll be the first team to go 162-0. So could happen twice. That ain't happening. So, Dillon, before we get into previewing today's game, let's do a little tidying up around here. Kyle Bradish has been throwing every other day since February 16th. Of course, we know that he has the UCL sprain. Anytime you hear UCL with a pitcher, you get nervous. I mean, we just had John Means miss basically 2 full seasons with Tommy after having Tommy John surgery. Felix Bautista is going to miss all of 2025 with Tommy John surgery. And now your best pitcher from last year, Kyle Bradish, finished 4th in the American League in Cy Young voting, has a UCL sprain. But he got the PRP injection, platelet-rich plasma injection, and those are known to work pretty well on anything grade 1 to grade 3 tears. So he says his arm is feeling good. He threw from 75 feet on Thursday. He's going to throw from 90 feet today. Bradish stated, "I feel good, no pain, no soreness when I'm throwing. Recovery has been good. So, yeah, feeling pretty normal. Everything is positive." Manager Brendan Hyde added in on that and said everything's going well, progressing nicely, and he's feeling good after he's playing catch. So, Dillon, that's pretty much – nice mug. That's pretty much as good a news as anybody could have hoped for. Are we feeling a little bit more confident today than we were this time last week about Bradish's return?
I would say it's a little bit more confidence, but I want to be careful using that word because the more confidence we have, the more we have our tendencies to get our hopes up. You know, similarly with Dylan Tate last season, when all we thought was he was going to miss the first month of the season, then we never saw his face at all until this spring popped up. Mm-hmm. You know, so everything's kind of progressing with cautious optimism, which sometimes doesn't necessarily mean there is optimism, just, you know, proceeding with caution, hoping for the best, expecting the worst. But it has been nothing but great reports so far. And from everything that's being reported is that the Orioles are proceeding with this with an expectation that Bradish is going to pitch on this team this year.
Mm-hmm. And a substantial amount of baseball mm-hmm. this year, which makes me think, you know, if he's on a throwing progression right now and it's the first game of spring training, we got, 28, 29 more games after this. You're about 5 weeks. It was 5 weeks from opening day this past Thursday, right? So just under 5 mm-hmm. weeks till opening day. So he's not – obviously we know that he's starting the year on the IL. I don't know how these throwing programs go, Dylan, but I have to imagine that they're going to want to get him on a mound in the next 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and just kind of start throwing bullpens. And then after that, hopefully we'll see him start to kind of ramp it up a little bit, maybe get an inning here or there in extended spring training, head down for a minor league rehab assignment. When do you think, and I know you're not a doctor, but when do you think is a realistic expectation to see Kyle Bradish back? Are we thinking beginning of May, mid-May, or later than that?
I'm not a doctor, but I keep auditioning for roles on TV. It hasn't come to fruition yet, but I'm getting there.
Nice.
But for Bradish, I mean, expectation wise, if everything goes according to what we think the plan is, I would at least hope possibly beginning to middle of June, possibly.
Okay.
I think they're going to take this very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
With this being the UCL, even with the expectation that he's going to pitch a substantial amount this year, I think they want to play it safe as much as possible with this UCL and not push things. Bradish might want to push things a little bit because he's feeling great, but sometimes you got to protect the player from himself. So they played things very slow with DL Hall last year when he was having his issues, and basically just had him stay in Florida for as much as possible. So I think they're going to play this as easy as possible without pushing things. And I think if we see him at some time in the summer, I wouldn't be surprised. And hopefully that's a situation where he can come up to the big league rotation and stay.
Yeah, I think that's the best that we can hope for. You'd hope earlier than June, but I do think that you're correct in them potentially slow playing it. And you look no further than John Means. John Means is healthy. He's not hurt right now. And that's the thing that we need to specify here is that he's a month behind in his throwing progression, but it's not because he's injured. It's because he had that little flare up after his final start last season, caused him to miss the postseason. And normally he would have started throwing progression probably beginning of January. He didn't start it till the end of January. And so he's a month behind, but he's also in a situation where his start can get skipped a few times because they have all the off days in April. So what we're realistically looking for with John Means is maybe they don't have him the first 3 weeks of the season, but he's able to come back middle to end of April and get things going. And it just goes to show that they wanted to play things safe, slow play it with John Means. They'll probably do the same thing with Kyle Bradish. And hopefully the Orioles get their strongest rotation possible back when they get to the point of the season where it's go time. It's really starting to ramp up towards the playoffs, and you need to be playing your best baseball at that right time. So I'm excited to see how things are going. Like I said, great news on Kyle Bradish for now. Cautiously optimistic, like you said. The more we get our hopes up, the more we're going to be heartbroken if it doesn't work out. So we'll try and temper our enthusiasm here. Right now, it looks like the replacements for Kyle Bradish and John Means are going to be Tyler Wells and Cole Irvin. And we remember what happened with Tyler Wells after the All-Star break last year, getting sent down after 3 starts where he gave up 11 runs in those 3 starts combined. Kind of some arm fatigue there. They sent him down, and he kind of took it not the way – he took it much better than a lot of people may have. He looked at it as an opportunity to really to get back on track, regain some momentum, and get back to the big league roster as a reliever and help this team make a playoff push. And that's exactly what he did. But what people forget is that Tyler Wells had a 3.18 ERA at the All-Star break last year. He led the American League in WHIP. I think he led the majors in WHIP at that point. And now he's due to throw maybe 160, 170 innings this year if we're going to ramp up from what he did last year. So you're looking at Tyler Wells. This is a really good pitcher. Are the Orioles taking even a step back at all if he's going to be in that rotation instead of John Means at this point?
I'm not sure they're going to take a step back. I mean, the one thing that really hurt Wells at all last year, even in his great first half, was that he gets hurt by the long ball sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't walk guys. He doesn't give up a lot of base hits, but when he surrenders them, he surrenders them.
Mm-hmm.
But pitching at Camden Yards, that's how you're able to have a 3.18 ERA while surrendering those home runs.
Right.
When you got a lot of right-handed bats in there. But it's I'm not sure they're taking a step back. I think there was even a decent amount of people in the Orioles social media sphere that were actually hoping for Tyler Wells to still make a rotation spot over either a John Means or a Dean Kramer this year. So in one essence, people don't want to see other guys get hurt. But some people were hoping for Tyler Wells in the rotation even before the injuries popped up.
Sure. Yeah, it's he was a formidable starter in 2022, albeit he was getting, it was supposed to be 3 inning starts, but he was so damn pitch efficient in 2022 that they'd be like, all right, it's 3 innings, it's 75 pitches, and the next thing you know, he's going into the 6th inning at like 63 pitches. So he was incredibly pitch efficient in 2022. Last year, they kind of took the training wheels off a little bit, let him go a little bit longer, and then the arm fatigue came up. It was more we're going to let you pitch till you can't anymore, is essentially what happened last year, and he did really, really well. I think that this year, he said that he stopped focusing on keeping his weight down, started focusing on durability, endurance, putting on a little bit more muscle, making sure that his body can withstand the rigors of a 162-game season. And so I have confidence that he can go out there and be the same pitcher he was last year before the All-Star break and extend that into the second half. And then if he starts to slow down a little bit, you've got John Means, you've got Kyle Bradish. But what you've also got right now is you need a 5th starter. And that 5th starter is looking like it's going to be Cole Irvin. Now, last year we know that the first 3 games he just couldn't find a strike zone. I think he walked 12 in those first 3 games. I think it was like 12 walks in 14 innings or something like that. And so then he gets demoted after 3 starts, which was like the quickest hook I've ever seen in Orioles history, even when they were terrible. I mean, that's a quick hook, 3 starts. I mean, they traded one of their top 6 infield prospects in Darryl Hernandez to get Cole Irvin and put him in their rotation because he's just a season removed from throwing 181 innings and pitching to a 3.98 ERA. So the guy can do it. Now, he went after coming back after those first 3 starts, he pitched to a 3.20 ERA the rest of the season. He only walked 8 guys the rest of the year. He seems to have really honed in on the control. The control was never an issue for him before he got to those 3 starts with the Orioles. You wonder how much of that was pressure being brought in to be a new rotation guy for the Orioles and just being on a new team. What's your confidence level in Cole Irvin? And I have to assume that when either Means or Bradish comes back, he's the first one to leave the rotation, unless he's pitching that well and somebody like Dean Kramer isn't pitching well.
Yeah, I mean, as much as since the Bradish injury news popped up that I've been hammering down, go sign another starter, go get a Jordan Montgomery, go make another trade for a Luzardo or a Cease, I am a little bit intrigued to see what Cole Irvin can do with this opportunity, because even though he wasn't a flashy move when the Orioles traded for him, it was one that the expectation was clearly set. This is a veteran starter. He's going to eat innings for you. He's going to pound the strike zone. And what did he do in his 3 starts? Neither of those things. Mm-hmm. So that's it. While I was surprised at the quick hook last season, it kind of makes sense because he came into this with an expectation he's going to pound the strike zone, he's going to eat innings. Even if he gives up 4 runs on the start, he's going to go 6+ for you. And that wasn't happening. So if those 2 things weren't happening, Orioles knew something was clearly off here. So I think it turned out to be a good move for them to make a quick hook. It showed they were serious about the season by making that quick hook.
Yeah.
But I am curious to see what he can do with this opportunity now, being thrown into the 5th rotation spot, see if he can get back to that pitcher that he was in Oakland. But reports coming out of spring training have all been positive. They say he's slimming down on his weight. He slimmed down, and he's added a new breaking ball to his repertoire. So it's kind of intriguing to see if Cole Irvin can take advantage of this opportunity and get back to what the Orioles thought they traded for.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting to see if he can fill that role. I envision him before the injuries as kind of filling that the role that Austin Voth was supposed to fill last year, where he gets a spot start. He's kind of their long man, their swing man. If a starter goes short, he kind of gets them through 2-3 innings so they can get to the back end of that bullpen. Now Cole Irvin's being thrust into this rotation. I like the fact that he's a lefty. I like the fact that he throws strikes. He's not that hard of a thrower, but like you said, he's developed that new breaking ball. And even still, he could touch 94 with his fastball if he has to. So this is a guy who I'm excited to see get an opportunity just to see what he can do. And if he goes 5-6 innings, he's giving up 3 to 4 runs with this offense. And I still think that they need a number 4 hitter. But I think that, if Jackson Holliday is what we think he can be and Kerstead really steps up, maybe they'll be fine with that. they were one of the top offenses in the American League last year. If Cole Irvin can go 5 to 6 innings, giving up 3 to 4 runs, yeah, the ERA won't look great, but he's going to keep you in ball games. And that's really all you're asking your fifth starter to do, is go out there, maybe win you a handful of games and keep your team in ball games, and hopefully the bullpen can take over. So I'm okay with him in that role. However, Dillon, do you think that the Orioles have been a little short-sighted in not going out to acquire another starting pitcher? Because one more injury and you're kind of up shit's creek without a paddle. I understand that you have Chase McDermott and Cade Povich and, to a lesser extent, Seth Johnson in your minor league system. I don't know that any of these guys are quite ready, especially not Seth Johnson, to take that step into a major league rotation at the beginning of a season where you're coming off 101 wins and you're trying to make a deeper run into the playoffs. I don't know that you can have confidence in those guys. Are the Orioles in a situation where they almost have to add another starter, just prepare for something? You don't want to anticipate an injury, but you don't want to be caught sitting on your hands if something happens, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's necessarily been short-sighted. There, it wouldn't surprise me if here in the next week or so we see someone else get added to the rotation, and or added to the rotation mix, I should say, whether it be a Michael Lorenzen or before he signed elsewhere, Hyunjin Ryu. It might not be someone of the ilk of a Jordan Montgomery. And maybe that's a situation just to make sure that who you're taking out when guys like John Means or Kyle Bradish are coming back. I'm not sure. Or because of all the ownership change, maybe they can't dive into that pocket yet. I don't know. But, the depth does look a little bit more scarce now. That's for sure. Now, could they not be making a move because they are expecting John Means to come back in the second, third week of April and everything's just going to be fine? Possibly. And maybe the hope is if it is a Cole Irvin that goes down or a Tyler Wells, your back end pieces there, that maybe a guy like Chase McDermott or Cade Povich in that situation could come up in May or so forth and be on the cusp of being ready to break through on this rotation. They do have a depth piece with Bruce Zimmerman. He could fill in once in a while as a fifth starter, fill-in starter, but not someone you want to depend on as a consistency in your rotation. So I think it's possible they add someone to just be in the back end mix here in spring. But if they don't, if something goes south, they're going to make a move, where it needs to be, whether it's a Dylan Cease or so forth. They may just ride with what they've got going into the season. And then if something happens, they'll pull the trigger on a move where it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean, and then you look at, they might not need to use Cole Irvin in that first month again, because, they have the opening days on Thursday, the 28th. They have that Friday off. Then they play the 30th, the 31st, the 1st, the 2nd, and 3rd. They have off on the 4th. They have off on the 8th. And then, so what is that? That's 4 off days already in the month of April. And then they have off on the 18th. That's 5 and 6 because they're off on the 25th. They have 6 off days the first month of the season. You know what I mean? You figure that you're not going to need a fifth starter maybe the entire first month of the season. So it could be a situation where Irvin might not even be in the rotation, because if they're expecting John Means to come back, mid to late April, he might just slot in there. Now you've got Tyler Wells and John Means, and now you're looking at it. Dillon, last year I said, how confident are we if they don't add another starting pitcher, but their starting rotation in 2024 is Kyle Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez, John Means, Dean Kramer, and Tyler Wells. And I had confidence in that rotation. Now you're looking at that rotation, and no offense to Kyle Bradish, I think he's a stud. Corbin Burnes is Corbin Burnes, right? So you're actually upgraded potentially by the time you get to mid to late April. Now, of course, it's not the upgrade that we thought, because we thought we were getting Corbin Burnes to go along with Kyle Bradish and have John Means be your number 4 starter, and Dean Kramer your number 5. But even still, last year's rotation to this year's rotation is starting to look a lot. This year's rotation is starting to look a lot better when you consider the fact that maybe John Means won't have to miss any starts because they'll just be able to skip the 5th starter at that point. So it's something worth keeping an eye on and taking into account, because this team has a lot to play for. And let's not forget that 7 of their first 9 series are against teams that were sub 500 last year. So the Orioles, last year they started the year in March and April, they went 19-9. and they could do something very similar to 28 games. They could go 20-8 in the first month. Now, you don't want to prognosticate the first month of the season because anything can happen. It's Major League Baseball. But Dillon, the signs are there for the Orioles to hit the ground running in 2024.
Oh, it absolutely is. Just like you said, with this first month on paper is supposed to be the easiest month of the season for the Orioles as far as with their opponents and what their record was last season. But it also, there's downsides to it in the side that this is where the Orioles are taking it easy with guys like John Means and everything, possibly because of the schedule, so you can't take it lightly. You can't, but you have to take advantage of the opportunity that you have because the schedule is going to get harder as the season goes along. So, like you said, you want to hit the ground running with a 20-8 start. Get out ahead of the curveball there, and hopefully be a little bit more smooth sailing from there. But if you start behind the 8 ball in that first month, and it looks like an upward climb for the rest of the season with the toughness of the schedule.
Yeah, you got to like I said, got to hit the ground running. I think that the Orioles will. I think that they've just got such an exciting young roster. And when Bradish and Means do get back into that rotation, it's going to be that much better for this team. I'm anticipating a big and exciting year for the Orioles. It gets started today with Grapefruit League action. And if you want to tune into the game today at 1 o'clock on Masson and you're looking for something to snack on while you're doing it, right now at Royal Farms, you can get a 3-piece tenders meal with Western fries, a biscuit, and a cookie for just $10. Oh, my, Dillon, that's what I'm doing. I'm getting me a 3-piece meal with Western fries, a biscuit, and a cookie for $10. You could go out and get a 10-piece dark meat Rofo chicken meal for just $15 and any size Royal Farms coffee and a Royal Farms brand bakery item for just $3. Stop by your neighborhood Royal Farms today. Mine's literally across the street. I'm going to finish up some mortgage work after the show and head over to Royal Farms, get me that 3-piece meal with the cookie and the soda, and then get back here to watch the Orioles game. So, and again, Orioles, 1 o'clock today on Masson. Their first spring game of the year. It's going to be televised. The Orioles are airing 7 spring games this season as opposed to the 4 that we've seen the last few years. However, Dillon, the broadcasters are calling the games from Oriole Park at Camden Yards. It might soon be T. Rowe Park at Camden Field or Goldman Sachs Arena Field with Garth Brooks and Billy Joel. I don't know what the damn name of the stadium is going to be. Maybe that's why Billy Joel plays here so much. They're going to give him. They're going to name the stadium after him. Billy Joel Field at Camden Yards. I don't know. But
I was pushing for Old Bay Park. All right, so
Old Bay Park at Camden Yards. You don't even have to change the OPACY abbreviation. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
dude, I think you just did it. I think you got to get Angelos or Rubenstein on the phone right now. Rubenstein on the phone right now. Old Bay Park. God, I love that. That's awesome. It's perfect. It's the perfect name. With the broadcasters still calling games from Camden Yards, does it remind you that John Angelos is still running this team? I mean, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing?
It does give me some remindings. We're all getting so excited over the sale and everything, and how things are trending in the right direction. And just on the side, you just feel a little poke in the hip, going, "I'm still here."
Oh God.
I mean, it's almost like you got to take the good with the bad, right? I mean, the bad is they're broadcasting it from Oriole Park. I'm sure the broadcasters aren't happy about it either. They want to be in Florida.
Yeah, for sure.
They want to feel that warm air right now. But the good part about it is that they've almost doubled what they're airing. So it's kind of a catch-22 there. It's a little poke in the side saying I'm still here, but at the same time, I'm a little bit grateful that we can watch the first game of spring, because what was it last year? We didn't get to watch the first game, if I remember correctly.
Oh my gosh! So
last year, until like 2 or 3 weeks in, right?
I think we were like two and a half weeks into the spring schedule before we got to watch. I think the last 3 games were like in the last 10 days of spring training, if I remember correctly. Last year, it was all a lot. They were backloaded for sure. But go ahead.
Sorry, and weren't they also all day games during the week too? where
Yeah,
majority of the population is at work at the moment.
for sure, man. Like, tune in to the Orioles at 1:00 Monday afternoon. Monday? Like, what? Like, can we get like a Thursday 6:00 game, like where everybody's home? Can we get one of those, or a Saturday at 1? Like, I still work in the restaurant one day a week, and I have to work at 4:30. So today's game is perfect because it's at 1:00. I can still get my career work done, do this show, and watch the Orioles before having to, like, I'm working all 3 jobs today. Like, Saturdays are tough for me, but I still get to watch the Orioles. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm also excited because Corbin Burnes is going to be on the bump for the Orioles today. Probably going to go 2 innings, I'd imagine, unless the pitch count really gets up in the first inning. What are you looking for out of Corbin Burnes in this first Grapefruit League start?
I mean, you hopefully want to see what you traded for in the first exhibition game. You know, I still remember, what was it, 2014, when the Orioles' big signing outside of Nelson Cruz was the 4-year deal for Ubaldo Jimenez. Mm-hmm. And Ubaldo was the first guy on the bump in the first exhibition game, and everyone was so pumped just to see the name on the back of the jersey in an Orioles jersey. So realistically, Corbin Burnes could go out there and get shelled in the first inning, and everyone's just going to say, he's just getting his feet wet. They're just, it's first game, exhibition game. Who cares? Everybody just loves seeing the name on the back of the jersey. So
if he goes out there and gets shelled, though, you're going to see some pitchforks and like, oh, great, we traded for the worst of him. Like, last year was the worst season of his career with that 3.39 ERA, and this year it's going to be 4.5. Like, some people are going to be doom and gloom, but those of us that pay attention to baseball, we know that the first handful of starts in spring training are getting your work in, and the last 2 or 3, you're just like, all right, let's really ramp up for the season. Mm-hmm. I think that you're going to see 2 innings out of him today. I'm excited to see this sweeper that he developed last year start getting a lot of Ks on. And apparently he's got this new curveball that just breaks at the back foot of a lefty in the box. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see that too. I'm just excited to see Corbin Burnes in an Orioles uniform because I don't know how long he's going to be here. If it's just this year, that would suck. But it's nice to start the first spring game of his first and potentially only season in Baltimore is with him on the mound. I'm excited for that.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, there are some people who have harped like, oh, he's coming off the worst season of his career with the 3.39 ERA or whatever it was. I'm like, okay, but we've all seen how adamant Corbin Burnes has been, both with Milwaukee and the conversations after the trade happened about he can't wait to get to free agency and cash in. Mm-hmm. You think Corbin Burnes isn't going to go out there this season and absolutely shove to get his payday?
Sure, man.
We see it with these key free agents all the time, where they're going out there and putting their best season up yet in their year right before free agency. Could it go downhill after they get their big contract? Yes. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. But in cases like Corbin Burnes, the expectation, not saying it's going to happen, but the expectation is he can't wait to get to free agency and cash in. He's going to go out there and put up his best year of ball yet.
And you look at what he did the second half of last year when he got that sweeper developed and under control. I think he was striking out like 12 a game, averaging 12 per 9, that is to say. The ERA, like 2.74 the second half of the year. Corbin Burnes is here to absolutely dominate, and I cannot wait for it. I can't wait for the Corbin Burnes and Garrett Cole showdown. Like, I cannot wait for that because I think that the Orioles lineup is better than the Yankees. Like, the Yankees have 2 hitters that are better than any hitter in the Orioles lineup to this point, right? But I think the Orioles lineup top to bottom is just so much better than the Yankees that now you're going to look at Burnes versus Garrett Cole. That's going to be a matchup where it's like, all right, I'm coming home from work early because I gotta get ready for this game. Like, I can't wait for that. Hopefully the lineup looks a little bit different than what we're looking at today. And look, guys, I am not here to complain about the lineup in the first game of spring training. I just thought that there were going to be some guys in the lineup that aren't in the lineup today. And we do know that this Orioles lineup is so deep. This Orioles team is so deep that they're going to have the game today is going to have 6 or 7 regulars. And then the lineup tomorrow is going to have 6 or 7 guys who we anticipate could be regulars at some point this year. If not at the beginning of this year, right? So those are the lineups that we're looking at. And then, of course, you're going to have some guys who maybe they won't be here by the end of spring, or maybe they're fighting for a job. So, I mean, let's look at this lineup right now. You've got Cedric Mullins batting first and playing center field. I had him batting ninth and playing center field today. You have Adley, but then I remember that Gunnar Henderson's not playing. I had Gunnar Henderson batting leadoff because I put this lineup together exhausted last night, forgetting that Henderson's going to be out the first few games. So Mullins leading off, playing center field. Adley Rutschman batting second, playing catcher. Anthony Santander batting third at DH. Ryan O'Hearn batting fourth, cleaning things up at first base. Austin Hayes batting fifth in left field. Ramon Arias batting sixth and playing third base. Jackson freaking Holliday batting seventh, playing second base. Jorge Mateo batting eighth and playing shortstop. And everybody's favorite Oriole, the Porsche, the Ferrari sitting in the garage. Ryan McKenna batting ninth, playing right field. I didn't make that up. He referred to himself as when you have a Ferrari, you got to take it out of the garage. That's what he said about himself in 2022.
I love it.
He's batting ninth, playing right field. I don't have an issue with anybody that's playing in the game today. I thought that because it's the first spring game, you got Corbin Burnes on the mound, the game's on television, that you were going to see, Heston Kjerstad and Jordan Westberg. And, I knew Jackson Holliday was going to be in there, but I thought that you were going to see maybe Colton Cowser, Ryan Mountcastle, I thought was going to be in there batting cleanup. So, the lineup to me is different than what I expected, but again, I'm not complaining about it. It's just it wasn't what I was expecting. Let's start with the big one. Jackson Holliday batting seventh, playing second base. He put on 10 pounds of muscle, which is noticeable over the offseason. If anybody read that article from the Baltimore Banner, I wish they were a sponsor for us, man, because they do such great freaking work. Oh, yeah. The Baltimore Banner, they had this article. I believe it was Jake Rill may have written it. And or who's the other guy? There's two Jakes, right?
You're getting me.
There's Jacob Calvin Meyer and there's Jake Rill. Which one of them writes for the Banner? I think it's Jacob Calvin Meyer. Yes. Calvin Meyer, yeah.
So Jake Rill is over at MLB.com.
MLB.com. So it's Jacob Calvin Meyer for Baltimore Banner put this article together talking about how Holliday put on 10 pounds of muscle in the offseason. When the Orioles drafted him, he was benching 195 and squatting like 225. Now he's
like 560. No, I'm just
he's benching 315. He's squatting like 445. He's deadlifting 500 pounds. He's got a 56-inch vertical freaking leap. Like, I don't know why you need a 56-inch vertical leap playing Major League Baseball, except to snare some line drives that might go over your head at second base.
But it gets us talking about it.
Exactly. And this guy is there any doubt that he's making this roster? Is there any doubt he's making this roster out of spring training?
I have to put a little bit of doubt in there. I have to, just to shield myself for the situation where he doesn't. Fair
enough.
And in no situation, a few times a week, I'll go through on the notepad on my phone and almost just kind of lay out what I think the opening day roster could be. I put in my locks, my likelies, and all that kind of stuff. And I can't bring myself to put in Jackson Holliday as a lock. And one reason being, he's a non-roster invite. And second reason being, I just got to shield myself from the disappointment. So I do think even as a non-roster invite, of course, he's the number one prospect in all of baseball, but I do think it's his job to lose, but I do think he has a chance to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
If he comes out here and looks somehow just totally unmatched, and overmatched, and can't hit a breaking ball for some reason. Now, I don't expect that to happen. I expect him to come in and hold his own and possibly even tear the cover off the ball and be hot during spring training. But if there's any chance that he looks overmatched a little bit against some of the major league pitchers he's going to face, yeah, there's a chance he might not make it. But as of this very moment, I'm penciling him in as the opening day second baseman.
I think that you have to, although Connor Norby, he has nothing left to prove at the minor league level. And his bat's special. He can only play second base. they've been playing him in the outfield a little bit too. I think it'll be interesting on the days that Austin Hayes doesn't play if we see Norby out there, because I think the Orioles might be looking for ways to keep him to get his bat on the roster. But you know what? Maybe I do need to take a step back saying, is there any doubt that Jackson Holliday is going to be on the opening day roster? Because last year, this time, I was saying, is there any doubt Grayson Rodriguez is going to be the Orioles opening day rotation? And he didn't make it. He got shelled every fourth inning in the Grapefruit League last year. So maybe I need to take a step back. I certainly wouldn't bet on Jackson Holliday being in that opening day roster. If you want to bet on Jackson Holliday making the opening day roster, then maybe a loved one might have a gambling problem. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services if you're betting on Jackson Holliday, whether or not he's going to make the roster out of spring training. Again, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit helpmygamblingproblem.org for free confidential services. I'm just excited to see Holliday play today. I'm also excited to see what we're going to get out of Cedric Mullins. He's batting leadoff for this team, playing center field. Last year, he was one of their best players before he went down with that injury. I believe it was on Memorial Day. Playing against Cleveland, they were getting shelled. It was like the seventh inning of like a 10-1 ball game, and he's trying to leg out an infield single, and he comes up lame. Missed 3-4 weeks, came back, started slow, and then the bat really started to pick up. He had that big game in Seattle where he robbed what would have ended up being the game-winning home run, because the next guy homered to tie the game. He robbed the home run that would have tied the game, and then he hits the game-winning home run in the top half of the next inning, and then he gets hurt again. And we all know how last year ended. I think he ended the season like 3 for 43 and 0 for 12 in the postseason. It was not a great look for Cedric Mullins. He looks to be healthy. The locks are cut off. He's going with the short hair again. He's a new dad, so he jokes about having that dad strength now. We saw him just torpedoing some baseballs in batting practice. If Cedric Mullins is healthy, do you think that he can regain that form that made him one of the best players in baseball in 2021?
I'm going to use the term cautiously optimistic again.
That's like the theme of this show. That should be the title of today's show.
Where it's like, I don't think I can bring myself to ever expect Cedric Mullins to put up a 30 for 30 season again.
Right.
I firmly believe that's behind him. If he does it again, that would be outstanding, but I more so think he's going to be more of that year after vibes, the 2022 version of Cedric Mullins, going to bat around 260, hopefully have an OBP in the 330, 340 range and hit around 20 balls out of the ballpark for you, and possibly room for him to struggle a little bit against lefties. Like the only year he had some great success against both handedness of throwers was that 2021 season. He had a little bit more struggles in 22 and 23, where the way they're playing Jorge Mateo in center field now, you almost wonder if Mullins continues to struggle against lefties, does he and Mateo almost go into a platoon in center field?
Yeah.
So it's I'm very curious to see how things play out. I'm curious to see if he can be back to a top of the order type bat again. At this very moment, even though he's batting there today, if you were to ask me to pencil in a starting lineup for opening day, I'm putting him in the bottom 3 of the order.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Gunnar Henderson's probably leading off for you to start the year. Although I do think that Jackson Holliday will end up taking over that spot before too long this year, especially if he gets off to a hot start in 2024. And I look at Cedric Mullins, and in 2021, when he was hitting everybody, he had like 279 against left-handed pitching. That dropped down to the 230s in 2022. But last year, he got off to a great start against lefties again. I think he was hitting around that 279 mark again last year before he got hurt. It's up to him to prove that he can hit left-handed pitching. He switched from being a switch hitter to solely left-handed because he couldn't hit left-handed pitching as a right-handed batter in his career. Switched over to the left side and immediately has that 30-30 season where he just torches left-handed hitters from the left side of the plate. And I look at this, and I think the platoon thing could be very realistic because we saw what Mateo did against lefties all year. We saw him go 4 for 4 in that playoff game that the Orioles, they lost all of the playoff games, but we saw that happen with him. So that could be a realistic scenario, which brings me to the next guy, Ryan McKenna, we can't escape him. We cannot escape him. You've got 3 bona fide, solid major league outfielders in Hayes, Santander, and Mullins, right? Then you have 2 first-round picks, one a number 2 overall pick, one a number 5 overall pick in Heston Kjerstad and Colton Cowser. There should be no room for Ryan McKenna on this Orioles roster, right? Now, look, they didn't trade him. They agreed to a deal with him through arbitration. He's out of minor league options, so they can't expose him to waivers without somebody potentially claiming him. And he probably would get claimed because he's a solid 4th outfielder for a number of big league teams. Mm-hmm. I feel like that time has passed in Baltimore. I feel like that time had passed by about May or June of 2023. And the reason that I get it, you need a right-handed hitting outfielder who can potentially play all 3 spots, but you have that, right? Mm-hmm. Because Santander hits right-handed against left-handed pitching. Austin Hayes is right-handed. He can play all 3 outfield spots. And, Santander is going to need days off. Well, that's when you bring in Heston Kjerstad or Colton Cowser, right? There's no need for Ryan McKenna on this roster, yet I am completely convinced. If I didn't have a gambling problem, I don't, but let's say I did have a gambling problem, I think I would still be forced to bet on the idea that Ryan McKenna is going to make this opening day roster because we can't escape him. And Brandon Hyde loves that man, absolutely loves that man. Dillon, will we ever see the end of the Ryan McKenna era?
Unless an unforeseen injury or an unforeseen guy happens where he just completely falls off and loses his spot this spring, I think we are seeing the end of the Ryan McKenna era. Like you said, he's out of options, and really there's no room for him here, assuming everyone above him stays healthy. But mm-hmm. I think that's talking more about the depth that the Orioles have here and less about him as a player.
Right.
Because like you said, he is a solid 4th outfielder at the major league level who can play all 3 outfield spots, has some speed, and has the ability at times to get a little hot streak going over a couple weeks span. Mm-hmm. So I think he would absolutely not go unclaimed on waivers. Someone would absolutely pick him up, and the Orioles would hate to lose that because that Ryan McKenna would be awesome depth at the AAA level to be able to call up when you need him. So it is unfortunate that he's out of options, but they may not have a choice because of him. So unless an injury happens, I just can't see a situation where he's making this roster unless what they see in Mateo in spring training, if they're not liking what they see from him defensively in the outfield. If Mateo's having problems tracking balls in left field and center field, and they're saying, maybe we really can't play him in the outfield. Maybe he really is strictly just an infielder, even though he has done it at the professional level before. If they don't trust Mateo in the outfield, that's the only situation that I could see McKenna making this roster.
Sure. And and then it brings me to Ramon Arias, who is basically in the same boat as Ryan McKenna. Maybe Arias' bat's a little bit better than Jorge Mateo, but he doesn't have the speed and he doesn't have the defensive versatility. He can play third base and second base really well. Mm-hmm. He can't play the outfield. He doesn't really play shortstop. He doesn't have that speed, which makes it more realistic to have Jorge Mateo on this roster, especially if he can play the outfield with any kind of consistency. Mm-hmm. Arias, the fact that he was here at the end of spring training last year, Joey Ortiz getting hurt last year, in my mind, made it possible for Mateo and Arias to both be on this roster last year. I thought that Arias would be gone at some point. He remained. He agreed to a deal through arbitration, and he's still here. And I get it. He's got a good glove, but the bat, he just doesn't have – he has a little bit of pop, but he hits far too many ground balls, hits far too many balls with weak contact. And the defense definitely fell off at third base last year. I don't think he's made an error at second base in like 3 years, but the defense definitely fell off at third base last year. Arias is batting sixth, playing third base today. His chances of making the roster, I just don't see it when you look at who's in the fold for this team in 2024.
Yeah, it's honestly very tough to see. I mean, it really depends on how they want to construct the roster. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, because the way I see it is that you have 3 non-lock spots as far as position players go on the opening day roster. And you can either fill that with two infielders and an outfielder, or one infielder and two outfielders.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it might come down, if we say that Holliday's making this team, Mateo's making this team, and let's say Heston Kjerstad is making this team, this final roster spot may come down to Ramon Arias versus Colton Cowser.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, do you want to carry an extra outfielder or an extra infielder? And a lot could hinge on what do they view Jorge Mateo as.
Mm-hmm.
And can he play both? If he can play both infield and outfield, they may not hold on to Colton Cowser because they may not have any room for playing time for him.
Right.
They'll have Heston Kjerstad as a fourth outfielder and then essentially Mateo as a fifth. Do you need a sixth in Cowser? Whereas if the roster is constructed that way, Mateo is your only bench infielder for three potential spots in the infield with second base, third base, and shortstop. And if one player is going down there and he's playing in the outfield that day, how does everything shake out that way? So it might come down to strictly Colton Cowser versus Ramon Arias, and it's all just going to depend on how they want to construct that.
And that's before we even get to Connor Norby.
Yeah.
Who hit 291 last year. What was it? 23 home runs, like 90 runs driven in. This guy has had back-to-back monster seasons at AAA for this team. He's got nothing left to prove. You're really going to send this guy down and say, oh, we want you to get a little bit more seasoning down at AAA. Like, what for? I was a second-round pick in 2020. Like, let's go. It's 2024. I've hit at every level. Let's go. I have to imagine, Dillon, that a trade's coming. I cannot imagine that they're gonna that they're gonna be okay with keeping Norby at AAA. That's not fair to the player. And maybe they don't care about what's fair to the player. If we don't have the roster spot, we don't have the roster spot. But if you have that issue now, when are you not going to have that issue? Because once Holliday's here, he's here. Once he's here for good, he's here for the next minimum 6 years. Same with Westberg. Same with Henderson. Right? Connor Norby's going to be your utility player. Is Connor Norby going to get an opportunity? Or are they going to get rid of Jordan Westberg in favor of Connor Norby? Probably not, because of the defensive versatility that Westberg possesses. If Norby can't play left field at the big league level, he's going to get traded. And maybe you see a package that has Arias, McKenna, and Norby in it, and somebody else from maybe a big-time reliever or maybe another starting pitcher. I don't know, but what are they going to do with Connor Norby if they're not trading him?
I mean, I have to think that in all the trade conversations that Mike Elias has had over the offseason, I have to imagine that Connor Norby was a subject to a lot of those, whether it was brought up by the other team or brought up by Mike Elias himself.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it was up to Elias, he would have rather traded away a Connor Norby than a Joey Ortiz. And that's not to say that he dislikes Connor Norby, but you have an easier time seeing a Joey Ortiz making an opening day roster as a reserve player because of his great defense and defensive versatility, can play all around the infield. Connor Norby is a second baseman who, with the glove, is average at best at second base. They're trying to experiment him in corner outfield spots. He's not going to play third base for you. So that's really what's hurting him the most, is that how often do you see a bench spot reserved for someone who doesn't really have any defensive versatility to speak of, where it's second base. You can try experimenting him in a corner outfield spot, but you don't want to experiment in the biggest left field in baseball. Right. Maybe you can hide him in right field at Camden Yards, but you're also trying to keep that spot reserved for players like Anthony Santander and Heston Kjerstad, who you might not expect to be able to go handle left field at Camden Yards. So I think what's hurting Norby the most is the players above him and the fact that bench spots don't really get reserved for guys who are just a second baseman. He has nothing left to prove, like you said, with the bat. He's been tearing up AAA at the plate. So I think they're either trying to work out a trade. Maybe it's trying to work out even just a smaller level trade of Ramon Arias to open up the spot for a Connor Norby. But still, if you have him in a bench spot, his only avenue for playing is either in a second base or corner outfield. And really, even then, there's still guys above him. So will he even get playing time if he's at the big league level?
I mean, yeah, you got a guy that I remember watching him play in college. And I just remember seeing him play in college and being like, This dude's hitting 417. Like, that's insane. He hit 392 in his college career with a 1054 OPS. Then he gets to the minor league level, 283 with an 854 OPS. I mean, the last 2 seasons in the minor leagues, he's combined to hit 50 home runs, combined to drive in 165 runs. Like, this is a guy who can handle the stick. He can get on base. He's got a little bit of speed. I mean, he's stolen 26 bases the last 2 years combined. You know, he hit 40 doubles last year. Yeah. 40 doubles. Like, this dude deserves a crack at the big league roster. And if you can't give that to him, you got to trade him. And maybe you pick up something that's going to help your roster in another way. I don't, unless he just flat out beats out Jackson Holliday, but even that's going to be short lived, right? That's not going to last because it's Jackson freaking Holliday. He's either got to learn to play the outfield or they've got to trade him. You can't just send him to AAA and be like, and realistically explain to him that he still has more to prove down there. He absolutely does not. He absolutely does not.
Yeah. And anything that they would hope that he would improve on would be from the defensive side of the ball, but I think we're pretty much capped out there. Mm-hmm. It's kind of, we've seen now Connor Norby is who he is, and that's what it's going to be. You know, yep. He's a player who's limited defensively, going to be solid and average for you at second base. You know, you don't know what he can do for you elsewhere other than just slightly below average. But with the bat, nothing left to prove.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe there's a situation where maybe they trade a Colton Cowser and they, you know, when Heston Kjerstad's not DHing, Norby can DH or Norby can play a little bit of second base every now and again. You play a little bit of outfield every now and again. And that's where it gives you the versatility because now you can fit him into 3 different spots in your lineup instead of just the 1 or maybe 2. You know, this stuff tends to work itself out. Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde are way more, you know, inclined to do their job than I am. So, you know, it's a cliche, but it's a great problem for this team to have that they have too many good players, you know, that they know what to do with. Something's gonna happen here because you're not just gonna leave it the way it is currently. I can't imagine anyway. I do want to remind you today's show is brought to you by Goose Flights. Pressbox urges you to drink a beer or 2 in honor of Tony Saragusa. We've partnered with Guilford Hall Brewery to release Goose Flights, a delicious lager to honor Tony's legacy and how his family is continuing to celebrate him with the Goose Flights Foundation. The Goose Flights Foundation is now run by Tony's kids and provides non-emergency medical transport to those in need. You can go out and buy 6-packs and single cans of Goose Flights at Guilford Hall Brewery and Costas Inn, with single cans also available at Alonzo's in Roland Park and the Glory Days Grill locations in Maryland. Or you can purchase 6-packs and cases also available at the Wine Source in Hampton. So raise a glass to Tony and support this great foundation. Go to PressBoxOnline.com/GooseFlights to learn all about it. Winding things down here on the Bat Around. Again, we are joined today by Dillon Atkinson. It has been such a fun show talking baseball with you, Dillon. And I want to go back to the pitching side of things because we talked a little bit about it earlier in the show. And it's going to be Tyler Wells and Cole Irvin. Definitely one replacing Kyle Bradish, and if Means has to be out a little bit longer than anticipated, the other replacing John Means. But the Orioles are weakening their bullpen by doing that. We already know that DL Hall got traded for Corbin Burnes as part of that package, so he's gone. Mm-hmm. Tyler Wells was potentially going to be a big-time reliever for you this year. He's in the rotation. Cole Irvin was going to fill that Austin Voth role. He's in the rotation. Can the Orioles avoid that by giving rotation spots to Chase McDermott or Cade Povich? How realistic? I mean, Chase McDermott is their reigning minor league pitcher of the year. He went from AA to AAA and just got better. Mm-hmm. I think that both these guys have an opportunity to make their major league debuts this season. Cade Povich reminds me a lot of Kyle Bradish, where that stuff is there, but they've just got to really refine it. And you could see him take a big step at the big league level and become just a dominant pitcher for the Orioles. But is that time sooner rather than later now because of what the Orioles are looking at with the injuries in their rotation, or is it still this summer at the earliest?
I mean, I really can't see a situation where they're making the ball club out of spring training. And I do think we're going to see them this summer. both of them. I do think it is a little fun that we're talking about two pitchers who came over in trades that the entire fan base was pissed off from. The
Right.
Jorge Lopez trade and the Trey Mancini trade,
Mhm.
and it turns out that these are now the two top pitching prospects in the Orioles system.
By the way, I thought that the Orioles, the haul that they got in those trades, I thought it was phenomenal.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had no issues with that, but I understand why a lot of people were upset.
Oh yeah, everybody had the emotional attachment, and it was also the fact that 2022 the Orioles had a winning record, and
Mhm.
it was, why are we trading away, players from the major league roster for prospects when Orioles are trying to make a playoff push
Your
here?
all-star closer,
Lift off.
and right, your all-star closer and the heart and soul of your team, and you
Right,
trade them both.
right.
So I understand from that standpoint, but the return they got, I don't think you can second guess it.
Oh, absolutely. And I was very surprised by the return for Trey Mancini
Mhm.
the most, because I remember I said it months before, where the talk was, will they trade Mancini? And I truly thought they wouldn't trade Mancini, just because I felt like the value that he had to the Orioles and Baltimore was so much greater than what another team would be willing to trade
Yep.
for him,
Yep.
because he had that emotional attachment, big in the community and everything. And, Orioles been through a lot with Trey Mancini. So I didn't think a trade would happen, just because Orioles would value him here, and every other team just sees the numbers and goes, we'll trade you this for him. But they were able to get around here for that,
Yeah.
But
I mean, they got, what was it, McDermott and Seth Johnson
yes.
for him. Yeah,
Yep.
like that's crazy value for Trey Mancini.
Oh, yeah. But I do expect to see McDermott and Povich at some point this season, whether it's coming up to make a spot start, or coming up to even fill back into the rotation if someone else goes down, or it might be to help out in the bullpen.
Mhm.
Which, I think if you put McDermott for the rest of the season in the bullpen, I think his stuff would be amazing in a 1 to 2 inning kind of bridge role
Mhm.
there, just for the time being until they work him in as a starter. But I don't think he's going to make the rotation out of spring training. I think they're going to roll with Wells and Irvin unless an injury happens. But even if an injury happens, it wouldn't surprise me if they give a part-time fifth spot to a Bruce Zimmerman instead,
Sure.
and let these guys groom a little bit more in AAA before coming up.
Absolutely. And, then you talk a little bit about Seth Johnson, who came over, and like he was one of the top rated pitching prospects for the Rays before he had Tommy John surgery. He has pitched all of 27 innings above AAA, above high A. And all those innings came last year. We keep hearing about how he could debut this summer, but how realistic is that? I know the guy's got great stuff. I've never seen him pitch personally, but I can't
Right.
imagine a guy who, but then again, it's Tyler Wells had never pitched above Double-A, and it had been what, since 2018, and next thing you know, he's closing games for the Orioles in 2020 as a Rule 5 pick. So stranger things have happened.
Right.
But Seth Johnson, have you seen him pitch? I've never seen the stuff. I don't know what he's got, but they rave about him in this organization.
Yeah, I too have not seen him pitch. All I can go off is what I read, and just like you, I'm just as surprised to see that there's a possibility he could pitch for the Orioles this season. But like you said, and I was going to bring it up as well, Tyler Wells, crazier things have happened. Although Wells' case was a little bit different. The Orioles were not a winning ball club, and he was a Rule 5 pick. He had to stay on the roster, or they had to lose him. So he was kind of forced in that situation, and it's turned out great for Wells and the Orioles. So I think more than anything, Johnson's going to get his work in Norfolk, and I can't see him coming up and filling a void in the rotation at any point, really. I think if anything, if they need some help, some innings out of the bullpen, he could help out in that regard if he's really lightened up in Norfolk. But, I think more than anything, it's kind of maybe an August timeline we might be able to see him.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas for guys like McDermott and Povich, I think we have a chance to see them as early as May if the Orioles need a spot filled.
Yeah, but I think more than anything, if the Orioles end up having to find another person for their rotation, it'll be in free agency or to a trade, because there's still some guys out there. I can't believe the guys that are still out there are still out there. Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, Michael Lorenzen. I cannot believe that.
Yeah.
they're there. So, guys, I want to remind you today's show has been brought to you by the Pressbox print issue. The latest edition of Pressbox is available now and celebrates the promise of spring for the Baltimore Orioles. The cover image features Anthony Santander, Cedric Mullins, Gunnar Henderson, and Adley Rutschman. And Todd Karpovic's story dives into the team's hopes to take the next step this season and compete for a World Series. Pick up the new print issue of Pressbox for free at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations throughout town where you find Pressbox, or read it all at PressboxOnline.com. Dillon, thank you so much for joining the show. It was so much fun. Excellent job today. We'll hope to have you on again soon. And I know you and Ryan are really good friends, so maybe we'll have you on with him as well during the season at some point, because this was awesome. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it so much, Paul. You know what? I thought about putting my name in at the bottom as Ryan Blake just to throw some people off, but it's a good thing I put my own name. If you're going to have me on with him, then we can't fool anybody.
Yeah. People would be like, the Spider-Man meme, right? Where they said pointing at each other. Oh man, you guys should just both come on wearing Spider-Man outfits. I think that would be hysterical.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let for sure. Let's do it. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Without you, we don't have a show. Thank you to all of our loyal fans, viewers, listeners. Without you, we certainly do not have a show. So thank you for tuning in every single week. Dillon, thank you again. Until next week, see you.